Greetings, fellow humans. You know me as Iceman Caesar, and this is what's up in the world today. Number 41. Last week was actually number 40. I didn't have a chance to label it on social media for those that care about numbers, but it was the live stream of the women's pay-per-view WWE Evolution, which I thought went pretty good. I immediately watched back the replay of the Evolution and synced it up with my commentary, and I thought it went pretty well. Appreciate to anybody that followed along and listened and has went to the effort of syncing it along so that you could hear my commentary along with it. Appreciate that. But this week we're on to number 41. We're going to be talking Better Call Saul, a season 4 review. They just finished up season 4 a few weeks ago. Awesome season. After Breaking Bad ended, it was satisfying, but you thought, for me at least, I thought there was, they left a lot of story on the table. Despite being satisfied with how the entire, 67 episodes or whatever it was of Breaking Bad, despite being satisfied at how they did that, I still thought there was tons more storyline they could have explored in Breaking Bad, in the Breaking Bad universe, like just with everything they created. But excuse me. So that's why I was really happy to see them announce Better Call Saul as a series, and for it to become what it has become, and that's basically like another, another season after season of Breaking Bad, because this show is. When it first started, I was kind of thinking it would be geared towards, Saul deals with the client every week. Sometimes, more funny, sometimes maybe more serious. But I thought it would just be kind of a weekly show like that. But they really turned it into something that's not only just an extension of Breaking Bad, but stands on its own as an awesome show, because they have so many characters that aren't in the Breaking Bad show. So. Kim Wexler, Howard and Chuck, and just, I could go on, but so many characters that aren't part of that universe that help Better Call Saul stand on its own as an awesome show. So, yeah, I'm really, really, really happy that it's taken the direction that it has, because man, through these seasons, getting to see everything built up, and it doesn't matter to me if the actors don't look as young as they would have in the actual timeline. Could not care less. Like, I'm more than willing to suspend that part of my disbelief, because it's worth it for the storylines that we're getting and the performances we're getting from these actors. So. But just when you think you're out of these, crushing storyline twists that happened in Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul pulls you right back in. For me, at least, with Werner's death, that was just a really heartbreaking conclusion to his story with the phone call with his wife and everything. But we'll get into that when talking about episode 10. But I think we. In episode 10, the finale, I think we finally saw the moment that's almost become a cliche to some fans, but I think we finally saw the true moment where Jimmy McGill is taking the seat and Saul Goodman is stepping up and taking the lead. So it was that was kind of a heartbreaking moment too, because I think Kim really, for the first time, realizes that there's this monster inside of Jimmy McGill, and it didn't go away. It didn't get crushed with Chuck's death or anything like that. It is turned into a raging inferno, and its name is Saul Goodman. So season 5 is going to be just really, really crazy to see what they come up with, and how that the fallout of everything that we saw in the finale comes down. But definitely be getting into all that. But like the last episode I did on Fear the Walking Dead. I think I'm going to break things down episode by episode again, just to kind of talk about each one, because there's so much going on in each one. You can't really sum up character stories and just in a general summary of the season. Plus I love the show. I love talking about it. So I think it'll be fun to break it down episode by episode. So excuse me. Let's start out with episode 2, because. In my season 3 kind of review, episode 4, the last video, What's Up in the World Today video I did on Better Call Saul, that was right after the premiere. So I've already talked about episode 1, so you can go back. I should have wrote down which number it was, but it was the first first video I talked about Better Call Saul in, so you can go back and check that out if you want to hear my thoughts on episode 1 of the season. But episode 2 is called Breathe. And man, this was a great episode to follow up the premiere with, and really get the season rolling, because they do, even though they're standing on their own as a great show, they're side by side with Breaking Bad, and they have that one of the greatest shows of in the history of TV to live up to. So they need to keep rolling with these great episodes, and this one was another one. Man, Kim's verbal evisceration of Howard was just like, man, that was both hard to watch and sit through, and at the same time a treat to watch. Because I mean, I just did not expect that. Just from the way I was definitely reading Kim totally wrong. I thought she was gonna go in a different direction, but man, just standing up for Jimmy and being like, you did this, and Jimmy went through all this, and you think that you. It was just like, wow. Just haymaker after haymaker. Howard was on the ropes, couldn't go down, just had to stand there taking them. And it was just like, wow. And I mean, but that's like, for a man, that's the kind of woman that you want, that you dream about. A woman that would, rise up and just, with a fury and have your back, have your, defend you. That's just, to me, that was a really powerful scene, and what an amazing acting performance from Rhea Seehorn. She has just, really put herself on the map, I feel, as one of the best actors on this show, because she is just actresses, I don't know what it would be. But it's just but this performance was just like, wow. Like, it's gonna, if you're talking about one of the best scenes in both shows, this would definitely be high on anybody's list, because it was just like, you don't see like verbal. I think the best description of it was a verbal evisceration of Howard. Don't see scenes like that every day on TV. So it was just an unreal performance from, and then Howard too. I mean, he literally played that perfectly. He didn't stand there like defiantly or anything like that. It really looked like he was barely kind of like, wow. It was just this. I just love that this show brings together such great storytelling and great acting, and hopefully the Emmys were watching this performance, and at least gets a nomination, if not a victory, because man, that was a great performance in this episode and throughout the whole series and season. And man, it's like, man, did Jimmy ever crush that interview with the copier salesman? Like, absolutely crushed that interview more than you could ever crush that interview for that job. And I mean, I thought he was crazy to be disgusted that they were gonna hire him based off of that. He's like, like, because of that song and dance. It's like, whoa, man, pump the brakes. Like, that is. It doesn't matter what your resume says. If you need to be able to do that in a sales job. Like, if you can demonstrate your ability to, in a performance of something like that, you get any sales job anywhere, because that's why you go to school, to build yourself up so you can sell yourself in a way like that. And that's why you have these big long resumes, so you can do something like that. If somebody can do that and is able to present themselves somewhat professionally like Jimmy did, like that is, I mean, as somebody in a sales position, you would want that person out there, like working for you. And it's just, to me, it's like, it doesn't matter. It just wouldn't matter what's on the resume. You put a performance like that. I mean, I was ready to buy a copier, ka-chung, ka-chung, ka-chung. It's like, maybe this house doesn't have a heartbeat, we need a copier here. I just thought that was, it's, and especially in a business office setting, if, Jimmy's going around to different things and making presentations, that's what, that is like if a boss could dream up a dream salesman, that's the performance that salesman will put out. So to me, it was just like, Jimmy was totally out of line to be like, thinking those guys were, pathetic or marks for, for hiring them based on that. Like anybody in any sales position would have hired him, or at least like done everything in their power to, you know, to justify bringing this person in. So it's but we of course Jimmy once he gets in there, he gets his eye on that Hummel figurine he noticed from one of his elderly client dealing with one of his elderly clients. He knew that that thing was going to be valuable. So obviously right there, slipping Jimmy's mind is going to be right on it. And so it looks like that's where Jimmy's headed next episode. And man, and then so Gus taking over, Gus being the one to take over Hector's care and recovery. I thought that was really interesting development because we know that Hector gets into the chair, but how just like there's a lot of years to get through before we get to Breaking Bad. So the fact that Gus was the one that responsible for making sure that he was taken care of and we're thinking he's trying to get the best care to get him better, but we see what Gus's real plan was later in the season. But you knew that everybody knew that Nacho was going to be in trouble. I mean, Nacho's one of the characters not in Breaking Bad, but a very significant character in Better Call Saul. So something goes down with him. With this universe, everybody's worried about that Nacho's gonna meet some crazy death. But so we already know and think he's in trouble. And we can see that he's walking the razor's edge, and then he's got Arturo with him, trying to strong arm Gus's guys and make a power play for some more stuff. It's like Jonas must be like, just go with the program, man. Like, give me a break for one day. And but Arturo certainly paid the price for trying to play tough guy with Gus, man. Like that was a crazy scene. I just didn't really. Gus came out of nowhere and got him with that bag, and in the moment I kind of thought Arturo was still around in Breaking Bad, so I was like waiting for something to save him. But as he's going down, I'm like, whoa. That was just seeing how he's like the man, like it wasn't just like that was. That was one of those scenes where only in Breaking Bad, but like I thought that was just a really, really intense scene. And but you see that Nacho's got no choice now. He's working for Gus, or he's gonna be taking a nap just like Arturo. And and then the rest of the episode, and then Mike, man, really pushing his luck with Lydia, because he's just supposed to be a paper transaction to deal with the money that he stole from Hector, but he's just coming in and acting like, well, now I'm going to be doing this, I'll be running this show, and you got to change this and do this and that. I can see where Lydia's coming from at first, but man, I guarantee they're thanking Mike later for everything he did, just setting it up, and only thing that took him down was a little school teacher named Walter White, but that is another awesome story. And that pretty much sums up the episode 2, Breathe. And which brings us into episode 3, called Something Beautiful. And of course, Jimmy would think to ask Mike, like, to steal this little figurine, but Mike certainly has bigger fish to fry now and is not going to be involved in Jimmy's little 2-time, bit stealing figurines and stuff like that. So I thought that was gonna be kind of just a what, like, no. But and as we saw, not happening, no chance. So he gets so we see where he meets the vacuum cleaner guy, Ira, more than willing to do the job like this. He was in Breaking Bad, so it was nice. I love little cameos like that. Like I mean, sometimes I suppose you could get to a point where you're trying to kind of like Solo in the movie Solo, where they're you're trying to give too many things a backstory or a relevancy. So it's but I love, but for me it's like I love seeing little cameos like this, and I hope we see them more and more. It's just as long as they're done right and not too much, and not just for the sake of a cheap pop or whatever. It's as long as they're done right, they're awesome. So I hope, so it's nice to see this little callback to Breaking Bad with Ira being the guy to steal it. And man, it looked like such an easy job, just, but not. You can never predict a dumbass husband doing something stupid and having to sleep on the work couch. And that's what we were into, and it's just like, I just I really thought that he was gonna get busted. Like I thought that somehow Saul was gonna have to talk his way out of this situation. So I was really into it. Waiting for the how this guy was gonna how Ira was gonna get caught. But no, they managed to get Jimmy in there and figure it out and get him out of there without getting caught, and with the figurine replacing it, so that nobody was the wiser. And it hasn't. And I'm. Spoiler alert for the rest, but hasn't come up for the rest of the season. Didn't come up for the rest of the season. So mission accomplished. Plan. After so much time, there's no way you would be able to pin it on Jimmy or anything like that. So it seems like they got away with it scot free. So it was a little bit tougher than they thought, but definitely as long as they got it done, I'm sure it's worth it. But Jimmy ends up taking the job at that cell phone store. And so that would be a key to his Saul Goodman enterprise that he was be able to set up. Because man, that guy's snap phone is in half like they were just like nothing. And now we kind of see where the start of that was. Having to work this job at the cell phone store. And Kim is back with Mesa Verde, but seems a little concerned, a little bored with this rapid expansion that they're going into. And it was tough to, it was interesting to read some opinions online about what people thought was going through Kim's head as she was walking around all those models and things like that. And it was really, people were trying to make it part of a bigger story and tie it into kind of Gus and things like that. And some people were just sticking to strictly character type things where she's looking like this is going to be her entire life for the rest of her life, and it's like this expansion. You can imagine just traveling branch to branch and setting up this and setting up that. And, I'm sure eventually she'd get high enough where other people could do that. But, Mesa Verde, I think some people thought she's going to be walking around and thinking, Mesa Verde is her life, and maybe that's not what that's not what she wants, or maybe that's, I don't know. I thought it was just a really interesting, and really interesting scene, and also people like, I guess sometimes the writers, they use certain color themes, like a character doing something will be always wearing red or blue, or there'll be a blue light or red or something like that. So people were looking at the colors in the scene to try and say like, oh, these locations are in this color and these are in this, so maybe these are the ones that are attached to the like Gus's business, or to some create. I just love. That's one of the reasons why I love this show, and why social media is a good thing, and why having the internet is so such a great thing too, because being able to watch these episodes, and then instead of relying on solely people that you're watching it physically with, you can go online and check out to see if people have similar opinions or similar theories, and check out theories that you haven't even thought of. So I just thought that some kind of scene that could have been a simple throwaway and just whatever. She's walking around a room of models, but really, when from Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul fans, breaking it down to like, man, what was she thinking? Like, what did this scene mean in the context? Is this something we're gonna call back to and be like, man, remember when she was walking around all those Mesa Verde expansion models? So thought that was an intriguing scene that provoked a lot of interesting thought for like I say, what could have just been a little throwaway scene. And at the end of the episode, she gives Jimmy a letter from Chuck, and it's a very very positive letter towards Jimmy. But it seems from there's no real, it's undated, and we don't get a date, and there's nothing really in it that specifically indicates a time it was written, but it feels like it was written a while ago. And but it registers almost no reaction with Jimmy, and this really affects Kim. And this scene, this was another scene that caused a lot of discussion and theories to come up. Oh, excuse me. Theories to come up about what was going on. People were thinking that Kim forged the letter. People were thinking that people were thinking that she changed certain things. People were just thinking that the real letter that she held on to, because it was like a scathing, maybe negative things, and she didn't want that for Jimmy. But I think that the letter was real. I don't know if the writers confirmed it, but I think the letter was probably real. But then she kind of was brought to tears after seeing Jimmy's reaction. And I think to me and that was, people were trying to figure out why was she crying? Was she feeling guilty that she forged the letter, or was she like reacting to seeing that Jimmy had no reaction to this letter and was seemingly had no real emotional reaction to Chuck's death? And it's like, for me, I think Kim is in a similar situation to kind of how my dad looked at relationships with fathers. Like, my dad had a great relationship with his father and lost him, way too early in a really brutal way. So it was, he just has, he couldn't imagine anything else but wanting to spend the next second or every second with your dad, or just loving, nothing but positivity and love. So like, for some of my friends that had issues with their fathers, were like, I don't want to see my dad. I couldn't care. I don't want anything to do with him. My dad was just never couldn't wrap his head around that. He'd be like, man, you have to. And I'm just trying to be like, Dad, you can't just like say that. You gotta realize where things are coming from. And like, but my dad got nothing but love from his dad. So like, and some people got no love from theirs. And but that's, to me, it's the same thing as. That's where kind of Kim is coming from. She can't, if her brother died, she would be broken up no matter how she felt about him, or her sister died, she would be broken up no matter what happened between them. So, she'd be crying or she'd be sad. So, she's expecting that from Jimmy, and when Jimmy's not giving it, she just can't like wrap her head around. And I think that, being a lawyer and being someone that's worked from the bottom up, so she's seen the worst in people, and I'm sure she's seen that non-emotional reactions to significant things like that. Especially, but she knows that Chuck and Jimmy were close. She knows they had their problems and they definitely were at each other's throats sometimes, but she knows that they were not like distant people that didn't know each other at all. Like, they were close, and you think that it would have warranted at least some kind of emotional reaction out of Jimmy, but definitely didn't give anything. So I think Kim is having a tough time. Just understanding how Jimmy could possibly not be upset, and I think that was a theme throughout the rest of the season with the bar committee and everything like that. But get into that in those episodes, but. But also, I think she could see that this could be I think she knew there was a monster in Jimmy. She was just hoping that her influence maybe would get it to be extinguished, but I think she can see it building up with his resistance to a reaction to Chuck's death, because he didn't really get a lot of love from Chuck, even though they did know each other. They were close, I guess you could say. Jimmy did a lot. Everyone knows what Jimmy did for Chuck with his illness, and how Jimmy made sure that he was able to function and continue to be associated with the firm for as long as he was, until everything blew up. But that was Jimmy's specific doing. So if it wouldn't have happened, it wasn't for that. But just like he did, and he got a lot of negativity from Chuck, especially at the end. Their last words together were very, very cutting and brutal. So it's like, like Jimmy's doesn't really have a lot of positivity and love to pull that reaction from. So I could see both sides. So, but and now it's so. Now we see Nacho's part of the story, man. So it was his turn to pay for his role in all this, and man, this was not a plan that guaranteed Nacho's survival. It's like if you survive, it's basically a story that nobody can challenge, and if you don't survive, oh well. Man, took a shot, left him there to die, and ironically, the cousins actually saved somebody instead of brutally murdering them. But the Victor and the Gus's crew shot up the car and then put a couple, one or two, I forget how many shots, but man, they put at least one good one in Nacho. And and for absolute realism, and it's like there was no there would be no thinking that Nacho's part of the story with how he was shot and how that went down. So I guess that's how you got to do it if you're gonna pull off a plan like this. But the cousins show up, actually save someone, and they get enough info out of him to start the process to get some revenge. And you do, as we saw in Breaking Bad, you do not want the cousins on your trail unless you're, badass Hank Schrader. And man, boy, do the cousins get their revenge. But we see that in the next episode. And there was a nice cameo in this one with Gale discussing the quality of meth with Gus. Gale was always a fun character while we had him on screen in Breaking Bad, so nice to be able to bring him back in the Breaking Bad or the Better Call Saul story. And it's I love this. This episode generated some good discussion. A lot of people were talking like, man, if Gus would have just been satisfied, I mean, he had a pretty high percentage from Gale. He just all he needed was a few ticks. All he got was a little bit more. But I think it was a combination of Gus not wanting to really get Gale 100% involved in the drug world. Obviously seeing more for him. Maybe I think that probably Gale is probably someone that Gus's partner that was killed would have probably really liked and would have wanted to keep out of the drug world and would want on the straight and narrow good path. So I think it was probably part that and part Gus's arrogance. He didn't want a chance for anybody else out there to provide better meth. He had to be the top. He had to be the kingpin. So in the end, that was kind of his downfall. But I thought that was a nice little cameo and scene to see Gale and Gus discussing the quality. That brings us through episode 3 into episode 4 called Talk. And is the man listening? I thought that was it was great to see Jimmy was quick to put his touch on this cell phone store, and selling privacy basically. It was it's just I just love seeing the Saul, the character Saul that we saw in Breaking Bad get built here, and having him the connection to the cell phone store, which is why he knows so much about the phones and what he can do with them and how he can dispose of them. It's just like I just love seeing all this built, and but it looks like the Hummel was worth the stress that they put in that they had with the robbery, because they cashed in bigger than they thought, and now it connects Ira to Saul pretty much long term because he wants more work. Now that Saul was able to get him this big payday. And Kim seems and Kim's boredom with Mesa Verde looks like it's going to lead her to trying to get some more pro bono cases, and she sits in on a judge's court, which he brings her in and scolds her for. That really annoyed me. Who cares? Let somebody. It's just what are you doing here? What do you want? What do you man? It's what do you settled? It's man, I'm watching. I'm not bothering anyone. Yeah, that annoyed me. But looks like Kim's kind of just getting herself back into the pro bono scheme of things. and now now we see that Victor sells the drugs that they stole from the car that they shot up with Nacho and Arturo, and they took those drugs and sold them to another gang so that they could implicate them in the attack. And then we enter the cousins. And these guys absolutely crushed this other gang, which was which were the Espinosas, and man, like only the cousins can. They went in there and did their thing, got the drugs back, got the money, and completely wiped them out. So the territory is now up for grabs. And that's exactly what Nacho figured out. That Gus turned this whole little problem into a power play to more territory for himself. And it's like, Gus would definitely call himself an ultimate opportunist, because shout out to Edge. But it's like taking something that he could have just used as get rid of a problem. He takes it and turns it into an advantage for himself. Like, that's why Gus is the kingpin of this business and why he's able to last for so long. But it's you take out enemies and competitors, and at the same time you get yourself more territory, establishing more of your dominance, and making more money. So it's a pretty brilliant power move here by Gus that didn't really have any consequence to him at all. And in Mike's story, Mike finally confronted this guy that's been lying about his story at the meetings, and at the meetings that Mike attends with his son's widow, Kaylee's mom. But Mike finally called that guy out. Man, it was an awesome scene. But like immediately, my creative thinking is like, this is gonna lead to like, why is this guy lying? Why is he coming to these meetings? Why? I wanted to know this guy's story. I immediately thought that he might play a bigger role in everything, and might be kind of, I don't know, some kind of a player, but never really came up in the never really saw much of him in the rest of the season. So I just I really wanted to know why he did that though. But Mike as a former cop could see the red flags in his story, and there's nothing that guy could say when Mike called him out though. I don't know if everyone still believes Mike, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if anything ever comes of this. But I immediately thought, like, man, what could this possibly, the significance possibly be? But it was a really cool scene for Mike to have. But then later on in the episode, he was flipped around, and he was on the other end of getting confronted by Gus, who was kind of acting pissed off that he helped Nacho try to kill Gus, but Gus is like, I only said that I wouldn't kill him. It's like, if anybody else wants to and they need some advice, I am right here for that. But Mike Mike could see through everything and realized that Gus did all this to bring them together so he could, he knew that Gus had something else to talk to him about, and that's what he said. He's like, either tell me about the job you want me to do, or let's get this over with. So it was I think that we're obviously moving forward towards Mike and Gus's relationship, and that was one of the things I'm so glad we're seeing in Better Call Saul. One of the things that I really wanted to see more of in Breaking Bad was the Gus's empire doing good, because it's like there was just such a well-run machine, and Gus did such a good job of playing mild-mannered restaurant owner to like just brutal, intense drug kingpins. So it's like I loved that, and I loved how intricate their empire was and how they just like went through so many details, and the only reason they got caught was because some some stupid jackass brought the whole thing down. It really reminds me of like the real life cocaine cowboys enterprise that these guys set up with the creating the tow truck companies and putting the cocaine in the trunks of the cars and putting them on the beds of the tow trucks, so if they ever got stopped, the driver could just be like, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm just giving they put the truck on and I drive it, man. I don't know what to say. There's nothing I could say. But the only reason they got caught was because one of their own guys got in trouble and rolled over on them. So it's like, so to me, it's like I love watching. One of the reasons why I love watching that documentary is this. I mean, I despise cocaine. I hate it. I wish I could wipe it off the face of the earth. I hate what it does to people, what people thinking about it. I hate how much it's in our society. So I definitely don't want to paint a picture that I think of it positively, but I do. It is an interesting subject for me in TV and movies and stuff, and then and seeing the real life of it is pretty interesting. And the Cocaine Cowboys documentary, I could watch that over and over again because it's just like their operation, how it was, and just knowing that it was real life is like crazy. But that Gus's operation really reminds me a lot of that, and that's why I love seeing it, and that's why I like that we're getting to see it in Better Call Saul. That brings us through episode 4. Moving on to episode 5, called Quite a Ride, and it was cool seeing a flashback to Breaking Bad, which would have been the episode Ozymandias, and Saul covering his tracks and starting the road to becoming Gene. I thought that was a cool scene to start off with, and having the show, and it's obviously, and like as I said earlier, him working at the cell phone store and having that connection is why he is able to hand out phones like Tic Tacs and snap them in half and pop up another one like they were Tic Tacs. So but it's cool. It's cool getting to see all this. And but man, I love the montage of Saul, going around selling all those phones to all the criminals and scumbags, and it's just like, only on these shows can you enjoy, seeing a guy help criminals, break the law and avoid and being able to sell more drugs and things like that. But it's been too long since his Slippin' Jimmy days, and he doesn't see the three little fuckers casing him up and figuring out, and it just always pains me to see people. He works, sells all those phones, gets a pocket full of cash, and then gone. But as he admitted to himself, he was stupid and he should have seen it coming, and but there's no way he was going to be letting that go. So you knew that revenge is going to be coming back around for those guys. Man, he's lucky he didn't end up dead, considering the area and around where he was sitting, around where he was selling the phones and who he was selling them to. So he should definitely be thankful that he got out of that one alive. And he tells him that he's down with seeing the psychologist, but he ends up just going to work instead and ditching not going to see the psychologist. Which, this is a TSN turning point. This is kind of, if he goes to see the psychologist, maybe he's able to wrap his head around. Because I think maybe it's more of a little bit of a pride issue too, why he won't have an emotional reaction to Chuck's death. Because it's like, man, you don't love me, and you don't want me to. I mean, look at their last bite and last words that he said to him. It's like, you wouldn't have an emotional reaction to me, so I'm not going to have one to you. Maybe a psychologist would have been able to break through that and see and allow Jimmy to grieve and mourn and process it properly, but decides to go off back to work to the cell phone store, and that leads him down the path to being Saul Goodman. So and Kim's not around, so something happens to split that relationship apart, and I don't think it's going to be pretty when it happens. But I think this was really one of the big turning points to where it could have gone one way and stayed stayed as Jimmy, but goes the other way and starts to become Saul. And even though Saul is, I mean, he's kind of a lovable character that everyone thinks of him from Breaking Bad, he really is he really is a pretty big scumbag. And so it's I have a sneaking suspicion through this season that they're gonna set us up not to really like Saul Goodman too much by the time he shows up in Breaking Bad. But that's that. We'll talk about that in the later few episodes. Kim is starting to focus on her other cases, starting to pick up some pro bono stuff. One in particular causes a conflict with Mesa Verde, and because of the plight of this client, she hangs up on Mesa Verde and goes to support her client. And see, like, great performance from this guest star they brought in to play this woman that had to go to jail. It's like, it just really filled me with just like an angst. Like, I just like knowing that there's so many people in real situations like that, just for possession of, just for a little bit, like, that's for a little bit of weed, like a little bit of possession of cannabis. She's going to like a place where somebody like that doesn't belong, like, and going to and doing, like, actually going to jail and losing her freedom and losing her everything. It's like, it's just, and for nothing. Like, it was just mad. Like, I really broke my heart, and I really thought that Kim was just gonna go to Mesa Verde and not go with this woman. And it was just, knowing that there's lots of situations like this in real life, knowing lots of women that reminded me of this character, and it just, really just filled me with an angst. And I was just, it bothered me, and I was really glad Kim that chose to help her out. It made me feel better, at least within that Better Call Saul world. This woman, got saved from going to jail and having her life ruined and everything like that. So it was, just something little like this really kind of affected me. And I was really happy, but man, I thought that Kim was going to be in. I thought this was. But this put her on very, very thin ice with Mesa Verde now, and I really thought that this was going to be the thing that starts to kind of. I didn't really expect her to survive with Mesa Verde after this, and I kind of thought this was going to be the thing that puts her into questioning what she's doing with Jimmy and his influence on her. So I was as happy as I was that this character got helped. I was pretty concerned with what the effect that it was going to have on Kim. So that was great. I thought great way to take the story. It's really could have stayed within the banking big business world with Kim, but it's nice to see her reaching down into the people that really need a good lawyer with connections and talent and skills like Kim. So it was I really like that twist, this turn, like this little turn to the story with the pro bono cases. And Mike starts his new job for Gus, overseeing the creation of this big super lab that we saw in Breaking Bad, and starting with choosing the engineer. And man, I just love scenes like this. I love seeing the guys come in and do their own thing about how they're going to measure and how they take the measurements and just the different things. I don't know why. That just entertains me. I just love it. And so I was loving watching Mike go through the candidates until he was able to settle on one that he really liked, Werner Ziegler. And he impressed both Mike and Gus. So and he ended up getting the job, which unfortunately would be not such a good thing for Werner. But at the time I was immediately kind of connected with the character, and I thought that I enjoyed watching him do it, like take his measurements and stuff like that and do his thing. So I was glad that he was going to be part of the show going forward. And that brings us through episode 5 into episode 6, which was called Pinata. And man, they're all about the kick-ass flashbacks this season, as we get a good one of Kim and Jimmy back in the day working in the mailroom. And man, I'm gonna miss when these flashbacks are done. Kim, showing her law skills, able to impress Chuck, and showing why she was able to rise from the mailroom right to the top of being a consideration. Definitely would be a consideration for any partner at that point in time that was looking for one. And but it was great. I just loved to see the call back to the scene of them, and Jimmy and how Jimmy was kind of hovering in the background, just observing, and you could see where his affection and just the connection between him, why the connection between Jimmy and Kim is so strong. So I just love that. I love that these flashbacks are in there, and they were all about giving us these kick-ass flashbacks throughout the season. And then Kim, in order to handle both the Mesa Verde and the pro bono cases and all the big workload of everything, decides to just take everything and join up with the law firm Schweikert and Coakley. And but she sees the drawings and Jimmy's dream for the Wexler McGill law firm to to be reborn and make a big impact on the world. But so that's why the news of Kim joining Schweikert and Coakley just crushes Jimmy, and you can see he has a little panic attack about it, and it's like that would be tough, because to him he's thinking that this means that she doesn't believe in him as a lawyer. She doesn't want to tie herself to his ship or whatever. It's she just doesn't. She wants to. She believes that. I think it's a tough pill to swallow for Jimmy when he's trying to come back. Just another big blow to Jimmy McGill, and a thing that I think maybe something that wouldn't have happened if Kim knew that had been seeing the psychologist regularly, but because going back to that turning point, but with the way things went, it's like Kim makes this decision, and it's I think it's just one. Without Kim, I think it was going to be hard for Jimmy McGill to exist over Saul Goodman, to as where in Breaking Bad we see Saul Goodman existing over Jimmy McGill. So but that was tough to see, because it's I'm a big fan of both Kim and Jimmy, so them working together is fun. But when you look at it as a character for Kim, she probably made the best and smartest decision that she could have at that time. But it's kind of interesting to see Jimmy get more emotional over the death of one of his former clients, Geraldine, the star of his first elder law commercial. He got more emotional over her than he did over Chuck, but that's why I think that his reaction to Chuck is more of a pride thing, because with Geraldine, he got a lot of love from her. He got nothing but positivity. He had good connections. They had that first elder law commercial really helped him do everything he was able to do with the big lawsuit that he's going to get that he gets a chunk from it at some point in time when it eventually settles. That we saw that he tried to get it to early settle with brutally last year. But that's the thing. He only got good positive things with his relationship with her, but with Chuck, complete opposites. So I think that he's more than willing to let himself have an emotional reaction to Geraldine. And I think he's even some of his emotions that he has for Chuck are coming out in his reaction to Geraldine. So to me, I think it's a big part of Jimmy's non-reaction. It's not that he really legitimately doesn't care or have an emotional reaction. It's just that he would consider that a victory for Chuck if he reacted emotionally to his death. So I thought that was interesting to see that, and it kind of solidified me in my stance, in my thinking that. And then Jimmy picks up his check, his $5,000 inheritance check from Chuck, basically just the amount of money so that Jimmy's not able to contest in court that Chuck left him nothing, but literally like not a dime more than Chuck then Chuck absolutely had to leave him. So, kind of an insult, kind of a nice thing. So, but Jimmy picks up the check at HHM, and almost doesn't recognize the firm or Howard, who are reeling from having to pay out Chuck's part of the firm, and also the reputation taking a hit from all the controversies and stuff. So, and Howard is definitely has seen better days, and Jimmy actually tries to give him a little tough love kind of pep talk speech, and Howard drops a great F-bomb. Love to see that. It's like, man, there's nothing wrong with a little cussing if it's done right, not overdone, and just put in the right spots. And this was definitely a right spot. This was definitely a right spot, and it was a great moment for Howard. And it's like, I mean, it was good. I think it was definitely something that Howard needed to hear, but like, it's just the only response that Howard could give him was the one he gave him. So I thought that was a great little scene between the two. And looks like Jimmy's going to use that $5,000 inheritance to buy a big stash of cell phones for his new business, and in doing that, and is also able to set up a trap for the three guys that robbed him. Making sure that they spread the word, on the street, and make sure that nobody else is going to be trying to mess with him and rob him for his cash or his phones or anything like that. And it's a great scene with with Huel and I forget it. But smashing the pinatas or whatever with the baseball bat. So I thought that was a great scene, and such a Jimmy Saul type scene. And again, Gus and Mike start making the arrangements for Werner and his crew to start to set up and start living there and staying there. And I think it's a good thing that Mike was there to suggest some upgrades, because Gus had it pretty much bare bones. Would have been a pretty miserable existence. I mean, it's already a miserable existence with Mike. Mike turned him into some pretty sweet digs. I got to give him credit for that. But I mean, still, with being confined and trapped in there, it would have been a pretty miserable existence anyways. But would have been even worse with what Gus had originally planned. So. It was, I like seeing that all get set up. And there's always got to be one in the crew that causes trouble, and has to just be the jackass of the group. And Kai immediately puts a bullseye on himself, right off the bat. And it's right off the bat. So I mean, but to me, it's like sometimes things get set up like that, and it's too obvious that Kai is going to be like the problem later in the season. So, but I mean, he was obviously Mike told his guys to keep an eye out on him. So it's like you're just kind of waiting for him to start to cause trouble. And man, inside this story about Gus dealing with Hector, it's like, man, I just love the story, Gus's story about the Kawati. And it was like, and the way, what an incredible performance telling the story from Giancarlo Esposito. It's like, the way he was talking about, and the fruit, and you could man, I could taste the fruit, and I could picture everything he was talking about. It was such a great scene, and but how he the Kawadi was near death, and if it survived, it was going to be crippled, and it would have to basically rely on Gus to survive, and wouldn't be able to do anything for itself. But he keeps it alive to basically teach it a lesson, you mess with me, and I'm gonna and it basically kind of makes it live a tortured existence for the rest of its long life. So. So I guess I really kind of got to admit that Gus is just a pretty bad dude and a pretty big scumbag, and not a good, and really that is who he is, not even trying at all to live as the good best version of himself. So when he first showed up, I was a big fan of him in the story. I thought he was a good guy that did what he had to in the and in the drug world to become the become the kingpin, and then he was going to do things right and do things the right way, and that's why I was so disappointed in Breaking Bad when he was okay with those stupid loser drug dealers using kids to me that was just totally out of character for Gus and for his empire that he set up. But but like so that but I just kind of thought maybe that was an out of character thing he did. But the more background that we see, the more that he really was a pretty bad dude for a long time, and this stories like keeping that Kawati alive were really kind of hammered home. But I did love the telling of the story. I thought that was an incredible performance. And that brings us through episode 6 into episode 7 called Something Stupid. And now Jimmy's new prospective office that we see in this episode is slightly different than Kim's new office that we see at Schweikert and Coakley. But Jimmy gets himself all riled up in Kim's new office, looking at everything, and it doesn't say anything, but we can obviously see himself just like thinking he's not good enough and thinking she thinks that she's better off in this. I just you can see him. You can just see him beating himself up for no reason, but you could see him doing it, and sure, and you could with how he reacts coming back into the party, definitely that's what he was doing. Excuse me. But goes back into the party and really embarrasses and humiliates kind of himself and Kim and the firm, and just really puts the firm in a bad situation. Talking up things that he knows the firm can't possibly deliver, and just raising expectations, like raising unreasonable expectations in the employees there. So it's just like that. It was just a pretty crappy scene for Jimmy, and it's like got himself all riled up for no reason. But that's just the state of mind that he's in, and like why did he really needed to go see that psychologist, and why I really feel that decision from him was the turning point that leads him away from Kim, because it really, I mean, she's not there in Breaking Bad. We don't see inside his life in Breaking Bad, but I can't imagine she's an influence on him with the kind of character that we see, unless it's all 100% an act in Breaking Bad. But this really pisses Kim off, and starts to, I think, I think it makes her realize that she made the right decision, and choosing to link up with Schweikert and Coakley and start working through them. And what it looks like, Hector is actually beginning to recover. We see him making lots of progress, and to the point of being able to getting to where we see him in the state we see him in, being able to tap that index finger. But the Dr. Gus was using says that's a huge breakthrough and just the beginning, and it's the fact that he's getting there so quickly is a very positive sign, and the biggest thing I think that Gus notices is that in the video of the treatments that Gus is reviewing, he sees that multiple times Hector has knocked over a glass of water, but Gus now picks up on that every time this nurse comes into the room. Hector knocks over the water, and this nurse is very, very beautiful and has a very, very nice caboose. And Gus realizes that Hector is knocking over this water, so the nurse has to bend over and clean up the water and give Hector a nice view of said caboose. So when Gus see him, and I hate to have anything in common with Hector, but it's like I agree in his assessment that this nurse was very, 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 very attractive. But Gus sees this and realizes that Hector's mind is not damaged at all. Hector's mind is, you know, exactly where it was before the stroke, and in a crazy turn that I mean, I was surprised to hear them talk so positively of Hector's treatment. I was wondering like, was there another stroke coming to that really that stops the progress? But we see that it was that it was something done specifically by Gus. Gus actually gets the doctor to stop all treatments, stop everything. Hector is exactly where Gus wants him. Of sound mind, completely trapped in this crippled body, and all he can do is have a few facial expressions and tap his index finger. I guess he can shift himself around a little bit, but it's like you got to be a completely miserable existence for him, and it's like, man, what an absolute roller coaster this whole rivalry has been between Gus and Hector, man. Because it's like, being more of a Gus fan, it was tough to watch some of these Better Call Saul scenes where it's like Hector is just being the biggest dick to Gus, and just like picking up dog shit on his desk, and just completely disrespecting him, and it's just driving me nuts. And knowing how it ends, knowing that Hector gets the final upper hand on Gus, it's like, oh, it was driving me nuts. But man, now seeing that Gus was the reason that Hector was in the state we see him in Breaking Bad, and that Gus specifically trapped his mind inside his body that he couldn't use. It's like I think when you add up everything, Gus came out on top as the victor in all this. But really, with them establishing as Gus is a pretty big scumbag and a bad guy, and not really someone you should be rooting for, makes it easier to know that Hector gets the upper hand on him. But man, knowing that Gus did all this to Hector deliberately, it's like, I think that you have to give when you're totaling up the final war, and especially since Gus wiped off all the rest of the Salamancas off the planet. Like, I think the war definitely goes to you'd have to declare Gus the victor. But just unbelievably awesome scenes, and I love seeing the story actually play out instead of just not knowing why Hector was in the way he was. Like, I'm so thankful, and I really cherish the fact that we get to see the background of these stories play out like this. And Werner and his crew get started on the lab, but work is going pretty slow due to the degree of difficulty of it, and the requirement for secrecy. The fact that you can't bring all this dirt out whenever you want. You can't just blast whenever you want. You can't excuse me. You can't basically make it known at all that you're doing any work, so that makes it very, very challenging. And the work itself, even if you didn't have to worry about anything, the work could be challenging. So it's definitely things are moving slow. And the crew, with their being cooped up and just all the confined situation that they're in, these guys are starting to get a little bit crazy. And the two guys, Kai, obviously the one troublemaker, and I think the other guy's name was Casper. They start fighting after the Casper guy knocks over one of the big support poles. Obviously, Papa Mike has to come in there and break it up and get these guys back on track and back to work. And, I was a little concerned that might have more of an impact than it did, but thankfully it was just a minor little bump in the road. But Werner suggests that these guys get some R&R due to the effect that the closed-in effects are having on the guys, which is definitely smart, because in the movies and stuff, in drug movies, you basically see they basically be paying it's an awful. It's just the way you just see them set up to make sure that these guys are able to enjoy their confined in things. And, it's more than just like TVs and beer and stuff like that. So, so obviously they needed to get him out of these situations and get him some actual R&R. And thought I was definitely thinking that was going to be interesting to see how that. But that trouble is coming with when you get out in that type of a situation. But that's coming in the next episode. Still in this one, Jimmy is going hard selling those phones when an undercover cop approaches them, and obviously it wouldn't take long for cops to realize that somebody is helping these guys evade police with cell phones that they can't trace or track, or that they can just ditch, or that they have like a bunch of. So that Jimmy was gonna be on the radar to the cops eventually. And he gets confronted, and but Jimmy knows that he's technically not breaking any laws and has every right to do so. So he's not gonna budge at all. And Huel is coming up and has headphones on, and he's supposed to be Jimmy's protection, and he sees this confrontation getting more heated and runs up and smacks this guy to the ground with his bag. But big mistake, because obviously he's an undercover cop. Huel gets arrested. And, Huel says he's going to run. He's not going to jail or anything like that. And he's just going to make this such a big, big problem when it doesn't really have to be. So, but nothing Jimmy can do, because he's still suspended for a few more weeks or month or whatever. So he has to turn to Kim to see if she'll help. And, reluctantly, she decides that she'll give her help. And, but she's not down with doing any of the dirty tricks that Jimmy wants to do, at least at first. And she tries to she tracks down the DA, Suzanne, to try and talk some sense into her, so that just to try and get this, treated down to a minor charge or punishment or whatever. But DA is not budging. She's not having any of it. Huel has some priors that she knows she can get a conviction on this, so she's not budging at all. And she really, with her biting words and stuff, she really pisses Kim off. So Kim decides to go all in on helping Huel. And at the end of the episode, we see that she's gathering supplies and telling Jimmy to get ready for something. So obviously she's down for a little bit, for maybe not going as far as Jimmy with the tricks, but she's obviously getting ready for something. And that brings us through episode 7 into episode 8, which is called Kushada. And we see that Kim is trying to use the employees of Schweikert and Coakley to let the DA know that they're going to be burying her in paperwork and motions, and basically doing whatever they can to drag this thing out and make it as difficult and just as annoying as possible. But the DA is, she's setting her ground at this, and so she's ready to go through any paperwork or any motions that these guys want to do. And Kim realizes that she needs to get things. She needs to have an ace up her sleeve, and that she definitely has one with the little plan that with her and Jimmy and everyone pulled off. And then we see what the plan for the supplies that Kim was buying at the end of the last episode were. Jimmy boards a tour bus, and he's heading to Huel's hometown of Coushatta, Louisiana. And when he gets on the bus, he starts paying people to write letters, and and people are different handwriting, different this and that, and different colors. And Jimmy's got all the different stationery and pens and highlighters and markers and this and that. So it's But at this point, we know that he's getting these people to write letters, but we don't exactly know what they're doing yet. And so we see a cool little montage of that heading on to and then Jimmy gets off. We're in Huel's hometown, and right at the post office. So he's sending these letters and sending them somewhere, and. When we see that where he was sending them was right to the judge. And the judge receives just bag after bag of letters for Huel, like he's Santa Claus or something like that. and all saying that he was this hometown hero, and just all these angry supporters saying they're going to storm the court and storm the city, and and protest, and just there for their Huel. And the judge is not having any of this over a stupid little case like this, and so the judge does exactly what Kim and Jimmy want him to do and says, get this over quickly, quietly, get it out, done. Don't want to hear about it, don't want to deal with it. But the DA, knowing that this is exactly what Kim wants, it is really suspicious. So she dives into these letters to try and start pulling out phone numbers to phone these people to see if they're real, to see if the story checks out. Man, I was so nervous when she started doing that because I thought for sure this is Kim's downfall. She's done. She's gonna get exposed and busted. They're gonna call someone. The story's not gonna add up, or she's gonna get exposed. Her law license will be done. I just thought this was gonna be the big explosion for Kim, but man, these guys are two steps ahead of everybody, and Jimmy and the student film crew was absolutely ready to go with 50 different cell phones on the table, so that any number that these guys pulled out would go to the cell phones, and they're ready with different voices and just ready to complete the plan. And I was just had to stand up and tip of the cap, because it's like I thought for sure Kim was done. I thought this was going to be her undoing, but just two steps ahead of everybody. And but this finally convinces the DA to cut Huel a deal. I mean, there's really nothing she could say after talking to people, and talking to Jimmy, who did a good job as the preacher. and Jim and Kimmy celebrate a job well done. They're on cloud nine, and they're on a high after doing something so dangerous like that to both of their careers, and coming through out of it clean on the other side. So they end up celebrating. Bow chicka wow wow. But this seems to have sparked something in Kim, because the plot, not the bow chicka wow. But Kim seems bored dealing with Mesa Verde, and suggests to Jimmy that they should do something like this again. And not where I thought that Kim was going to be going. So seems like this at the time in this episode seems like it might have been sparking something in Kim to go down sort of a slipping, not a path towards a Saul Goodman type of Kim, but it was I just like to see them working together on this, and and for it to be a success and come through. It's a great little moment, maybe one of the last good ones we'll get with Kim and Jimmy, because the split has to be coming somewhere, and we see in the finale where Jimmy's headed. So and then we see Mike providing the crew with the R&R that he was providing, that he was talking about, and obviously strip club is like at the top of the list of where these guys are gonna want to go, and what kind of R&R these guys are gonna want. So but does not go smoothly, to say the least. Kai making that bullseye just bigger and bigger on himself, starting a fight, getting himself kicked out, which was interrupting a nice little conversation between Mike and Werner. And talking about their lives, and oh man, but as soon as Werner was talking about his wife and everything, I knew that he was done. His clock was ticking. But it was he was just, the actor was doing a great job at playing the character, and Werner had a great little story inside the Better Call Saul world. So it's I like that little conversation they had. But of course, Papa Mike has to go deal with the children again and break up this fight and make sure everything gets back on track, and nobody's doing anything too crazy. Excuse me. And but after Mike is finished dealing with that whole situation, he comes back to find this stupid idiot Werner bragging to a couple of guys about the lab he's building, and just bragging about the plans and how hard it is to do and what he's been able to accomplish. It's like you drunken idiot. It's like, oh, as soon as I saw that, I mean, I knew that when he was talking about his wife, I kind of got worried. But when I saw him blab about the lab, I was like, there's no, even after this is done, he's finished, because he has demonstrated that they can't trust him if they let him off on his own. Who knows if he's going to go to Germany, get drunk, and start blabbing about this crazy super lab that he built in America. So it's, to me, I was like, his fate was sealed after this, even though Mike let him off the hook and managed to let Gus know that it wasn't a big deal, let him off the hook. I knew that Gus was thinking, okay, like when this lab is completed, Werner is taken out. So it was, I was just like, you stupid man, what are you doing? But he was, I think he's still, I think he knows enough about what he's dealing with, but he's still pretty naive about it with the way he acts about certain things and in certain situations. And this was, the alcohol doesn't help, but this was just a huge mistake on Werner's part. And and Nacho, who is able to get himself back on the mend and back at work, and looks like he's going to be running the show now and playing the role of Hector for Crazy Eight. Oh man, that scene of Nacho ripping that piercing out of that guy to show him who's boss and establish dominance. It's like, now we know why Crazy Eight was how Crazy Eight became the way he was, man. It's like that world will just like eat you up, and Nacho was not having any of that. But it looked like he was going to be the man running the show until another King Salamanca shows up, man. Just when you think you get rid of one, another pops right back up. And man, this guy was the absolute most dangerous kind. Just coming off as a very cool, nice guy, but those guys are the most dangerous, because with that kind of a demeanor, you never know if they're being straight up and if they're actually being in a good mood, being nice to you, if they're just playing you up and getting you off your guard, and they're going to turn on a dime and and are able to get one over on you. So it's so immediately right off the bat, I was nervous about Nacho having to deal with this guy. And he even says in dealing with and talking about his food, he's like, "Oh, you're gonna die." It's like, what the, oh man. But to me, once again, that was almost too on the nose for Breaking Bad to be like, or for Better Call Saul. It's like, for him to say that to Nacho, we're all expecting that it's gonna, it's gonna happen in reality, that this guy's gonna kill Nacho, or at least help facilitate his death. But I just kind of thought it was too on the money. But it definitely gets me worried about Nacho's fate. So but Lalo Salamanca, and this guy, the actor playing him did a fantastic job bringing this on. Immediate charisma when he's on the screens. A guy that you want to watch more of and see more interactions of on screen. So I thought it was a great introduction, even though it was I definitely felt Nacho's like, oh man, like another Salamanca to deal with. But that brings us through episode 8 into episode 9, which was called Wiedersehen. Probably did not say that right, but looks like the Slippins are back. Slippin' Kim and Slippin' Kimmy. But they're able to con a city clerk into approving late plans, or the unapproved plan, approving expanded plans that would have taken more. I guess it would have been impossible to get approved at that point. But Kim just cons her way into being able to getting a stamp on them. And in real life, probably wouldn't have been that easy, but who cares? It was a great scene. It was a great great to see Jim and Kimmy working together again. And but after this, Kim seems to be getting her fill of it, whereas Jimmy seems to just want more and more and more and more, and just seems to just be getting started. So Jimmy is thinking long term, like they're gonna this is gonna be their life going forward, whereas Kim, I think, thought she wanted more, but after this is kind of thinking like, maybe I've gotten my fill, trying to slow down on it a little bit. So but Jimmy is just full steam ahead towards Saul Goodman type of stuff. So But first things first for Jimmy, he's got to get his law license back, and he's got to go through in front of the bar committee to do it. And when he does, he makes a really good case, but you can tell they are waiting for some kind of emotional statement or some kind of thing from Jimmy about Chuck. Like, I want to do this for Chuck. I want to. They wanted to hear something. They wanted to hear some kind of emotional connection or reaction to Chuck, and Jimmy was just not going to give them just none of it. And I kind of thought, I don't know, I wasn't sure if Jimmy was going to pass or fail, but he kind of knew right off the bat that he didn't think that he did enough to pass, and sure enough, they denied him. And it's just. I was kind of shocked because we obviously know he gets his license back, but I wasn't really expecting it to go through another appeal process. So I was kind of shocked when they failed him, or when they denied him. So, but that leads us to Jim and Kimmy meeting on the roof. Not before, man. That was a heck of a bag throw that Jimmy threw at the wall. Man, that was right down the pipe, Nolan Ryan style. But that leads us to Jim and Kimmy meeting on the roof of the parking garage to talk this all out. And right away, with how Jimmy is talking, she figures out that the committee wanted something about Chuck, and Jimmy was not going to give it to them. And when Kim starts to say that that's what he should have done, Jimmy gets defensive and starts getting mad. And, saying that, he didn't want to give him that, like Kim is just, she's not supporting him, and she's gone off to Schweikert and Coakley because she doesn't think he's good enough, and she's been slumming it with Jimmy, and just all of those things he's been beating himself up with that aren't true and aren't correct, but, it's hard to tell yourself. It's hard to tell yourself that in a state that Jimmy's in, so he's letting that all come out in that moment against Kim, and Kim really fires back like, man, I've been your biggest supporter. I've helped you through everything. I've never turned you down. I've helped you through things I didn't really want to. So you need to just chill and realize who's in your corner here, and. It's tough to see Jim and Kimmy argue like that. We love them as a couple and as a team. So to see them, clashing together like that, and knowing that something is going to split them apart to where they're not, on the same page together in Breaking Bad, it's like, you're hoping it's not this, and that, you're hoping that they'll this isn't the thing that pushes them completely apart. But at the end of the episode, Jimmy looks like he's starting to leave the apartment, and that would have been for sure been the beginning of the end for them. But looks like Kimmy is not gonna give up. Kim is not gonna give up on it, and she asked Jimmy if he still wants a lawyer, because clearly Kim has got one more plan to try and make this thing work. And. And then we see that in episode 10. And then through this one, Nacho and Lalo visit Hector in the elder folks facility, and we see, Nacho, and they get an update on Hector, who still can only tap his index finger, and they're told that when it's no and he does nothing, it's yes when he taps his finger. And we see that we get we realize that even the little bell that Hector uses for the ding, it isn't just a random bell that was put on there. It has a backstory, and it could fall into the giving too much an explanation, but I don't think it does. I loved it, and I thought it's like, man, this bell is just as fucked up as Hector is, because it's like, man, the story behind it was just like, it was just like, wow, these guys are some legitimate scumbags, man. Excuse me. Like, we realized that this bell belonged to a man that owned a hotel, that obviously Hector was trying to strong arm and either get a percentage of the profits, or maybe get, just take it over himself. And this guy, refused, like Nacho's dad was. He was running a legitimate business. He didn't want to bend his knee to Hector. And to Hector, that was an ultimate insult and disrespect. And he ended up torturing this guy and killing him while his family was listening in the next room, and then burning down his hotel. Like, what the fuck? Oh, man. And the bell was one of the only things that survived the fire. And Lalo, when he was a little kid, or a teenager or whatever, ran back in there to try and grab a souvenir, and the bell was one of the things that didn't burn up, so he grabbed it and brought it out, and he's saying they can still smell the horse skin and whatever. It's like, that is just, these guys are sick, man. But then so he decides to strap it to the wheelchair so that Hector can communicate with people better. And it's just like, wow, man, like, wow, what a great job, and not just giving it like, oh, it was a bell from the past, like giving it a messed up backstory that like really just, and it really enhances Hector's character as one of the worst dudes on this show. So I love that they gave it a backstory, and I mean, I hated the content of the story and what they did to this hotel owner and everything, but I loved the story and Lalo's presentation of it. And then they asked Nacho to step away so they can talk for a second. It's like, man, that cannot be good. That's like the last thing you want to have happen if you're Nacho. And then Lalo comes out. It's like, that Hector just wants to kill everyone. It's like, oh God, who are they talking about? Are they talking about me? Someone else? Like, but then Nacho and Lalo go to see Gus. Much to his chagrin, I thought that was such a great moment with, Gus is like, sure, yeah, come to my office, and then looks at Nacho like, what the dude, and Nacho's just like, what do you want me to do? Like, what do you... Thought that was a great little moment between Nacho and Gus. Like, it was just like, really, what do you want Nacho to do? There was nothing he could do in that moment. So this meeting between Lalo and Gus, man, Lalo's all over the place here, complimenting Gus, insulting Don Eladio, wanting more power. Just can't get a read on this guy. It's he was really doing a good job being all over the place, and I think Gus kind of got a read on him, but I think he was having a little bit of trouble and was definitely uneasy with Lalo's presence. And obviously the last thing Gus wants to do is deal with another Salamanca. So, it's interesting to see what kind of what Lalo's role will play on the rest of the story in Better Call Saul. And Werner and his crew look to finish one of the last hard parts of the first part of the job, I guess. Doing the construction, they're blasting the last part of the rock away so they can put this elevator down there. But one of the wires must be loose or something, so Werner volunteers to go down there and figure it out. But once he goes down there, we see he has some kind of a panic attack, and before he finally is able to fix it and get things going. And this was another topic of a lot of discussion online, people wondering why he reacted like that. And my theory behind it is I think that he reacted like that because I think the Mike's veiled little warning about, you need to be more careful and do your job and get this finished so you can go home. Because if you don't, things are not, basically saying, if you don't, you're going to get killed. I think Werner realized the gravity of the situation he was in, working for Gus and doing this big project and stuff like that, because once he realized that this elevator was going to be pretty close to finished, once they blasted away this rock, and once that was finished, wouldn't it be impossible for them to bring in another engineer to finish off what they had already started. So I think Werner started to realize that these were not people that were just going to let him go, and that his big mistake, after his big mistake, they were not going to let him go, and that he realized that he was a dead man once this job was finished, and this. This explosion represented a big step closer to that and potentially his death. So I think that's why he reacted, and then he realized that he needed to do something to get out of this situation. And that's why I believe that he immediately asked to talk to his wife and talked about missing her. And once he was able to talk to her, immediately tried to escape and successfully escaped. Like right after that panic attack, he left. So I think the gravity of the situation he was in just came down on him all at once, and the realization that he was a dead man no matter what. Once his job was finished, so he just, he did the only thing he could do to stay alive. He thought, and that was escape and try to survive somehow. And I thought that was pretty good to mask the sound with driving the truck over the thing as it exploded. Pretty cool thing. But yeah, as the episode ended, we saw that Werner made his escape, and these guys are going to be tracking him down like dogs. So pretty good scene to lead into the finale. And that brings us through episode 9 into the finale, episode 10, which is called Winner. And Mike is hot on the trail of Werner, tracking him to a money wire agency, knowing that he's not going to be able to get anywhere without money, so he probably would have had his wife transfer him money, and Mike is hits the nail right on the head. That's exactly what happened, and he's able to go to this money wire agency and convince the clerk to let him look at the surveillance footage and figure out that Werner's going to a local hot springs that he most likely got the idea from one of the pamphlets he was looking at when he was standing on the payphone. So Mike grabs a bunch of pamphlets, starts calling the resorts, and finally finds the one, hits the jackpot, finds the one where Werner is staying, and where his wife is supposed to be meeting him. And Mike goes to talk to Gus about it. But while Mike was at the money wire agency shop, Lala was spying on. When Mike first went to Gus's chicken farm to tell Gus that Werner got away and show him Werner's letter that he said he'd be back in a few days to finish the job and everything like that. Lalo was doing surveillance on Gus at that time, and saw Mike there at the meeting, so he tried to follow Mike. And he followed him and kept following him. But Mike eventually realized that he was being followed, and had a great little trick about taking gum on the parking pass and jamming it in there so that the gum got in the thing and it wouldn't work, giving him at least a few minutes to get away. But Lalo just smashed that guy's car through and tried to get away, but obviously wasn't able to continue following Mike, so went back to the money wire agency that he saw Mike at earlier. And this scene was a little bit of you really needed to suspend your disbelief to think that while Lalo was able to climb up into the roof with that flimsy paneling and get all the way to the other side that quietly and plop down. But you know what? It was a cool scene, cool little thing for that character to do, so I'm okay with it. And but he seemingly killed the clerk. Like, he had blood on his face, and I think he saw the clerk's feet. So either knocked him out, smashed his head good with the end of the gun, or he legitimately killed that clerk. So it's these Salamancas are legitimate scumbags through and through, no matter how they try to present themselves. But then Lalo's able to look at the surveillance footage and figure out the same thing that Mike did, that he was that Werner went to a local hot springs, and Lalo used the same trick to track down where to where Werner was staying and actually got Werner on the phone, and pretending to work for Mike, was able to get not a tons of information, but enough information for it to be a problem about the super lab out of Werner before Mike could get there and cut that call off. So wasn't like, I mean, he didn't tell him everything, but he told him enough for it definitely to be a problem. But Mike shows up to get Werner, and I'm going to come back to Mike and Werner's final confrontation because I want to talk about that right at the end. But part of Kim's plan is making part of Kim's plan to make Jimmy a lawyer again and win this final appeal is to make Jimmy have a big show of emotion, finally have a public emotional reaction to Chuck's death on the 1-year anniversary of it. So he spends the 1-year anniversary the entire day at the gravesite, pretend mourning, really playing it up, and he's really getting excited that he's being such a great actor about it. And I think Kim is hoping that maybe this would inspire a few real, genuine emotions, but it doesn't seem to be going that way at all. But it's working. He's, people that are coming up to visit Chuck's grave are definitely reading Jimmy as someone that's genuinely remorseful. So he's pulling off this acting performance. And they also strategically reveal that Jimmy was the anonymous donor for this new reading room at the law library dedicated to Chuck. That Howard's a big part of there, and they have the one of the student film crew and a few other people there just casually mentioning that the anonymous donor was Chuck's brother Jimmy. So really trying to pump these tires that Jimmy is remorseful about Chuck's death. And Jimmy also has to sit on the panel of the scholarship board to determine who is the winner of the scholarship that they give out in Chuck's name. And he actually ends up relating to one candidate a lot who reminds him of himself. A flawed candidate, definitely made mistakes in her life, but turned things around and is doing a great job at things. But because of those flaws and mistakes, just nobody's even given her a consideration or a chance. And this seems to be the final straw that breaks the back of Jimmy McGill and just unleashes Saul into the world, because Jimmy tracks this girl down as she's leaving, and similarly gives her a speech that he's wanting to actually give to himself about just people never think you're anything more than a fuck up, so just whatever, do whatever it takes, bend the rules, break backs, do whatever you have to do, step on people, just do whatever you have to do to be successful, and not take just really telling her to do anything, do it by any means necessary. And I think he's really using her to give that speech to himself. And that must have really freaked her out, this guy dragging her down. You'd think it would be like a pep talk, but it's more of like a, do whatever. It's kind of, it must have freaked her out. But when Jimmy gets home to Kim, he basically says to her basically says to her what he said to the girl. After he has like a little kind of a breakdown in his car about just how they treated the girl and about himself and the realization about everything, but basically says to Kim what he says to her, and says to that girl Christy. But Kim is able to craft a speech that should be a home run for Jimmy to read, along with Chuck's letter, and just with everything, he should be able to hit a home run at this appeal and squeak through and get approved and back to a lawyer again. But during the hearing, in the moment, Jimmy actually stops halfway through Chuck's letter. Stops halfway through Chuck's letter and seemingly makes a very strong, heartfelt speech about Chuck and living up to the McGill name, and actually bringing out tears from people in the audience, including Kim herself. So I think she is hoping that this was the culmination of everything she's been trying to do to bring out a genuine emotional reaction about Chuck, but It is not the case at all. Jimmy completely just takes the mask off and realized it was all bullshit. It was all a dog and pony show, and he was just 100% acting. And not only that, but he was actually laughing at the fact that someone was actually brought to tears, not knowing that Kim herself was brought to tears as well. But like, just was must have been a tough scene for Kim to take, and but and then shocks her like right out like immediately right after that moment in requesting a form so that he could practice law under a different name, telling her that he does not plan to practice under the Jimmy McGill name, and she's just standing there stunned, and he's just, don't worry, it's all good, man. And it's like, wow. And I think that's your moment that's almost become a cliche, but Jimmy McGill has stepped back and Saul Goodman has taken the center stage. And that's just, you could see Kim's heart break in that moment, knowing that not only did it not work to get an emotional reaction out of Jimmy, but the Jimmy McGill she knew and loved might be gone. So that's a very tough moment and a very crazy scene for Jimmy and Kim. And that brings us back to the last conversation between Mike and Werner. And Mike takes Werner into the desert and calls Gus. And Gus realizes that due to Werner's conversation with Lalo and the information he gave, he's too much of a liability. He's done too much. He can't be trusted. He can't be trusted to come back and work. And it's time for him to be killed. And he says he's going to send guys there to do it. But Mike stops and insists that he'll do it himself and he'll do this, and Gus allows it to happen. And Mike gets off the phone and immediately has Werner call his wife to send her home and save her life. And I think Werner, I believe that Werner was going to meet with his wife, and they're meet at this little hot springs and then fly out to somewhere and disappear off the map. I do not think he ever planned to go back. I think he knew he was going to be killed and was just trying. He knew that meeting her at the airport or anyone would be too noticeable, so he thought meeting her at this hot springs would be the safest place, without alerting her too much, without alerting anybody else. They could meet there, and from this hot springs, they would take a flight into somewhere where they could be safe and not have to worry about being caught or killed by Gus and his men. I think he thought that it just wouldn't be a big a deal to Gus as it was, and that he wouldn't be tracked the way he was, and I don't think he thought he'd get caught. And man, when Mike tells him to call his wife or she might be killed, I think he's just like, whoa, what? That was just a hard scene to watch. And oh god, that last conversation, man, he has to get angry with her on the phone for her to accept that she needs to turn around and leave and not see him and everything. And oh man, and it was just the definition of heartbreak, man. His last words to his wife were, "I don't want to see you." And I mean, his loving wife that he loved so much, didn't have any children, all his love was poured into her. And all he wanted to do is see her, and basically this situation arose because he wanted to see her. And in the end, his last words to her that she'll ever hear were, "I don't want to see you." And all the great loving life they've built, the cap on that, the end of that is, "I don't want to see you." And oh man, it just really affected me. It was really a heartbreaking scene. It really I was just. Oh man, it was a heartbreaking scene, knowing that that Werner and his wife, the last thing between them was, "I don't want to see you." That was just brutal to me, brutal. And my Werner requests to be able to just go out into the desert a little bit so you can get a better look at the stars, and Mike follows him out there and just wastes no time. Walks out, follows him out there, stop, bang, over. And so, man, the way they shot it from far back like that, and where Mike and Werner were kind of silhouettes, it's just like, unbelievable unbelievable cinematography, like the way they shot it, and just like what a brutal conclusion to Werner's story, man. It's like it's going to be interesting to see how this lab gets built, because we know that it's at least a few years away. So, be interesting to see how Werner's crew handles Werner not being around, and if they cause any more trouble because of that, and who they bring in to finish it. So, but it was just I thought it was a really heartbreaking scene, the last scene between Werner and his wife, and I was just like, man, this show. Not quite on the level of Jane, but in the same ballpark for me. And I also believe in this moment that Mike saved his own life by killing Werner himself. Like, I believe that this was Mike's responsibility. He was the guy that picked Werner. He was the one that's supposed to oversee this. He told Gus to give him another chance after the drunken thing. I just think that if Gus had to send a crew out there, that it might have been Mike being killed along with Werner, and then I think Mike knew that as well, and that's why he insisted that he be the one to do it, and step up and do it. At the same time, wanting to do it, not wanting anyone else to be involved, because I think he did have friendly feelings for Werner. I just think that he wanted to. It was his responsibility. He wanted to do it, but at the same time, I think that he knew that, there was a chance that Gus could just, Mike was too much of a liability now, causing the stuff with Madrigal, and just, I think it was just this would have been too much of a problem, and he would have eliminated Mike and got someone else to do it. So I think Mike saved his life in this moment. And so this the last episode. The finale was called Winner, but it really could have been called Last Words, because it really was about Jimmy's last words to Kim were basically Saul Goodman, and like he's completely in Saul mode now, it looks like, and Werner's last words to his wife, I don't want to see you, had so much meaning and energy attached to them. It's just like. It's like great finale, great episode, and just like this is what, even though it was brutal and heartbreaking, this is what I want out of TV. I want to feel, I want emotions, I want energy dragged out. That is what I want, and that's what Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul do. They drag those things out, and they're a genius way of creating these moments. So I just big props out to everyone for a great season, culminating in just a great finale. And like I said earlier, I believe Werner was going to leave and not come back. I don't believe that he planned to. I don't believe that he actually planned to come back after 4 days, or whatever he said. Like, I think he was gone for good. So, but that brings us to the end of talking about season 4. For the future, we have. I think that everybody thought that, when Kim breaks off from Jimmy or Saul, that it was, she was either maybe going to die, go to jail, or I think that everyone thought that she would be the one to initiate the breakup. I think that maybe that Saul Goodman might be the one to initiate the breakup with Kim. Like, Jimmy McGill loved Kim Wexler, but Saul Goodman is not a one-woman man. If because of the things he was saying in Breaking Bad, he was talking about getting, as he was talking about, he was just talking about things he wouldn't have been talking about if he was in a relationship with Kim. So it's, but I think it could be like, Saul Goodman doesn't want to be attached to Kim Wexler anymore. So I think that could be a twist that Saul breaks things off with Kim. So we're definitely heading towards that relationship breaking apart. Hopefully we see more Breaking Bad cameos. I mean, Hank's got to be one coming in there, because seemed like he and Saul definitely had a prior relationship before Breaking Bad. So, and he's a character a Breaking Bad character they could easily weave into easily weave into Better Call Saul storylines without ruining the Breaking Bad stuff. So I think we're going to see Hank and hopefully more cameos show up. Lalo, is he alive or dead in Breaking Bad? Like, when Walt and Jesse kidnap Saul in the desert in Breaking Bad, Saul asks if Lalo put them up to this, and says that it wasn't him, it was Nacho. So people take that as Lalo has to be alive in Breaking Bad, or Lalo has to be alive in Breaking Bad, and Nacho's probably alive as at least around, leading up to Breaking Bad. So it's interesting to see what Lalo's fate and what fate will be. I think it will be like based on what Saul said. I think that Nacho and Saul will kind of have to team up to kill Lalo, and that when Saul gets kidnapped, he'll think that Nacho survived the killing attempt, and that he'll blame it on Nacho, saying it was all Nacho's. Like, I didn't want to do it. So so I think that gives me hope that maybe Nacho will be able to escape to Canada, to Manitoba. That's awesome to see Manitoba driver's licenses for Nacho and his dad. But gives me hope that Nacho and his dad maybe will be able to escape to Canada at the end of this, and that Nacho and Saul will make an attempt on Lalo's life, and that in Breaking Bad, Saul thinks it didn't work, and Lalo's coming back for revenge. So it's interesting to see what happens with Lalo for sure. I really hope that Nacho and his dad escape and get through this, because, man, the hotel story really scared me that Nacho's dad was going to be the one who's going to have the same fate as a hotel owner. I really hope not, man. Nacho's dad's a sweet character. I would really hate to see him have that kind of a fate. So, but I mean, can't wait to see where Nacho and his dad's story take them through the rest of the seasons and episodes. And finishing the lab, obviously we're going to see a new construction crew and everything like that. But lots of stories for the future, and I mean eventually we're going to catch up to Breaking Bad, and it's will they end the series when we catch Breaking Bad, or will we actually get to see Saul's behind the scenes as Breaking Bad was going on? That'll be tough to navigate, but it'll be unbelievably amazing if they do. And we also have the scene at the beginning. The Gene scene with that cab driver. It's like a few things, like the isotopes. One thing people threw out there when Walter White first met Saul, he was wearing an isotopes cap. So, man, anything could be possible with that. Or it could be, a Kim kind of throwing back to Jimmy, like, hey, remember at one point you used to be Jimmy McGill, not Saul Goodman, not this Gene guy. So it's going to be interesting to see where the story takes us. I can't wait for season 5. Hopefully it doesn't take too long to come through, but it's been a great run. This is a great addition to the Breaking Bad universe. Like, I'm as satisfied as I was with Breaking Bad. I thought there was so much more story that they still could have told on the table, so I'm really happy that we're getting it with Better Call Saul. And it's just not only is it enhancing Breaking Bad, but it's just standing on its own as a great show. So I love season 4. Can't wait for season 5, and hopefully it gets delivered sooner rather than later. So. But that has been a lot of talking, so that's going to be it for me. I thank everyone for tuning in and coming along for the ride today, and we'll see you soon down the road. Much love and God bless. Peace.